Hello Unreal Engine games designers and developers. In today's video we're going to look at another free asset in action. This one is for the month of October 2021. It's called Surface Trails, and as you can see in the video that's playing, it allows you to displace materials caused by objects in your scene. Looks pretty useful, so let's check it out. Here we are in the Epic Games Marketplace, and if you go to the free for the month section, these are the assets that are free for October 2021. And the asset we're looking at today is this Surface Trails, which allows you to take objects or mannequins or people and apply their trails to cause displacement or to add decals or materials to another object. So it looks useful, and as always in these assets in action videos, we're going to have a quick look at the asset with the demo maps, and then we're going to try and apply it in a real life project and see how easy it is to use. So first thing to do is to acquire this. It's free, and then if you go to your library, you'll see it in amongst all your assets. Now with some assets you get to add them directly to an existing project. With this Surface Trails ones you have to create a project first and then migrate it. So click on Create Project, and then it will create a project with the name of Surface Trails. So open that up. And you'll see that it has a demo map, and most of the instructions are on this billboard within the demo scene. So let's see what it does. Let's go into play mode, and we've got this snow texture. If I run through it, you'll see it's carving displacement through the snow and revealing a dirt texture underneath. So it's sort of a blend of two textures. The snow is displaced upwards, and then the mannequin feet are forcing it back down to reveal the dirt texture underneath. So as I move around, you see the dirt texture becomes more and more visible, which is quite a nice effect because often snow has dirt underneath like that. So this is one way of using the Surface Trails to displace the materials. Another way, which they've got a demo over here, is to just apply a material. So yeah, you might use this, I guess, in water or rivers to create ripples behind you, and you can see that the body is effectively carving a trail through the other material. And this black cube over here is a very simple example of what's going on. Effectively, it's creating a texture. You can see it on the wall behind. It's creating a texture and then applying that to the surface. So that's a render texture that it's using. So it looks really useful. Now the interesting thing is going to be how easy it is to use in a real project. So the first thing I need to do is to migrate this asset over to the project in which I wish to use it. So here's in the content folder here, here's the trail system folder, and everything's within there. So I can right click, migrate, and I want to migrate everything in here. So click OK, and then I will go to my project, which is called Foliage Test. Go to the content folder. Make sure you put it at the root level, the content folder. Sometimes you have problems if you migrate assets at a lower or higher level. And click select, and that says it's migrated successfully. So we can close down this Surface Trails project, and then if I open up my Foliage Test project, you should see in the left hand side here we now have the trail system folder in here ready to use. So this is the project that I want to use it for rather. You can see, you might have seen this in a previous video of mine. If I go into play mode, I've got this sort of spooky forest. And what I want to do is, first of all, let's see if we can apply the snow with the dirt underneath to it and see how easy that is to incorporate into an existing project. And then I'll try something slightly more advanced, and I'll try and create a new texture, sort of a watery swamp ground, where the watery swamp is displaced but comes back up as I move through it. It doesn't leave trails, it just sort of gloops around the feet. So we'll give both of those a go and see how easy they are. So let's start off by having a go at putting the snow in. Let's first of all have a look at the trail system folder, and you can see there are various blueprints. Now the instructions for this said that each level that you use this in needs to have a Trails Manager blueprint. That's the kind of heart of this system. So let's take this Trails Manager, drag it into the scene, and if you look at the parameters of the Trails Manager, it's got some configuration here, what maximum distance that the trails will be rendered, and then whether the trails are attenuated, that means whether they disappear over time, and this side fade, which sort of applies how much slope there is at the side of the trail. So we'll play with those later on, but the Trails Manager's in there now, so we've got the heart of the system in there now. And the way the system works is that you put in objects that cause trails to be rendered, such as the feet of the mannequin, and then you put in materials that receive those trails, either as a displacement or as a material or as a blend of both. So we're going to apply the snow material. So the first thing we need to do is find that material. We go into the trail system materials, examples. Here we've got this snow landscape and a snow landscape instance, which was what was applied in their demo project. Let's give it a go. Take the landscape, go down to the landscape material, and I'll drag the snow landscape instance into the landscape. And immediately it's gone black. But if you've ever used landscapes, you know this is a kind of a common issue. This landscape material is using a blend of snow and dirt. It's not an auto landscape material which is applying them. So we actually have to create those layers and fill them in order to have snow and dirt in that layer. So in order to do that, we go into the landscape, go to paint, and here we've got snow and dirt. This is left over from my previous incarnation, so we can get rid of that. So what we'll do is we'll add a weight blended layer normal for snow, put it in the default directory, and it says it already exists. Actually, that's probably from when I did this tutorial before a test. So let me go to that folder. Let's delete these previous layers that I created before. Okay, now let's create a new snow layer. Okay, you see it appears on there, and let's create a dirt layer that will show underneath as well. Again, weight blended layer normal. And let's come out of landscape mode, and it looks like the snow is on the ground there. Let's go into play mode. Okay, so the snow's there, and I can run through it with my mannequin, but you can see that although the snow is being displaced upwards, we're not actually leaving any trails in there. And that's because all we've done is put in the material, but we haven't actually created a trail, we haven't got a mannequin that's writing a trail, and we haven't got a landscape which is receiving a trail. So we need to do a couple more things in order to get this to work. So first we need to create a trail from the mannequin, and the way you do that is you attach trail components to the mesh that you want to write the trail from. Now I could do this for this mannequin, but I'm going to show you what they've done with their example mannequin so you get the idea of how to set this up, because I think it's quite long-winded to set it up in this tutorial. So let me come out of play mode and let's go into the trail system, blueprints, examples, and they've got an example third-person character here. Let me just open it up and and go to the viewport. And you see it's a standard mannequin camera setup, but attached to the mesh is these trail components. So if I click on one of these, you see it's a BP trail component. So you can add multiple trail components. And what they've done is they've created two on the right foot, one on the ball of the foot and one of the toe, and two on the left and one in the body as well, which was what was used when we went through the lava material view. And if I click on one of these, you can see that this trail component has two key parameters. The hardness, which I haven't played with too much, but I guess it affects the amount of trail it writes. And then a tag. And this is effectively which surface it wants to write the trail to. So you can give it you can give any tag here, but you have to create the same tag name on the material or landscape that you're going to write the trail to. So they've put a default here of trail receive. So let's remember that tag so we can apply it to the landscape. So currently the trail is going to be written by these feet components as it runs through the landscape. So that's already been done. Let's come out of here, and if you go into your game mode and you change the third person character to that example one they've used, so now we're using the third person character with those trail components on. Let's go into play mode. So if we run around, there's no change, because although we're writing a trail, we're not actually receiving the trail on the landscape yet. So that's the next thing we need to do in order to get this to work. Let's come out of play mode again, go into our landscape, and you remember that all we need to do is tag the landscape with the same tag that the feet were sending. So let's search for tags in here. There's no tags currently attached to this landscape. Add an element, and let's call this trail receive. Okay, and now let's go into play mode. Aha! Can you see that now we're not only writing the trail from the feet, but we are now receiving the trail on the snow material, and it is displacing snow and showing the dirt underneath. So that's a pretty straightforward way of applying an existing material. So the only real material they provide, the displacement material, is this snow one. So I wonder how easy it would be to set up a completely new material, because what I want to do on this level is I want to set up a sort of a swampy, watery ground. As you run through it, it leaves that sort of a gloopy displacement as I go along. So I wonder how easy that's going to be to set up in this system. So let's come out of play mode, and first of all I need to get myself sort of swamp water material. So I've gone into Quixel Bridge and I found this asset here called swamp water, which has got a watery surface, which I think will look good as you run through it. In your export settings, change it so that you've got the albedo, displacement, normal and roughness. We want the displacement here so that we can amend the displacement to use the trail that we're creating. And actually there's one thing you need to do before you export here. Let's go back to Unreal Engine. If you go into the Megascans link, make sure you tick enable displacement here. If you don't do that, the material that it creates won't have any displacement functions in there, and we need to adjust those displacement functions to use the trail. So it's an important step. Make sure you've got the displacement enabled Megascans. Right, with that done, we're back to Bridge and we can export our swamp water. Exporting to the project successfully, and if we go back here, we now have this swamp water material, our 4 textures that we exported. So let's go back to the landscape, click on X on the tag so we can see all of the parameters of the landscape, and we'll replace the snow landscape material with this swamp water material. Let's put that in. Okay, And let's just go into play mode. And pretty flat here at the moment. Be interesting to check the tessellation. I don't think with this particular material there's much displacement going on with it. Let's just come out of here and go a bit closer and have a look. I go and look at the ground. There's a little bit of displacement here, and we might need to adjust the tessellation later on for both this displacement and the displacement that our footprints are creating. So anyway, we've got the swampy water. What I want to do now is, as I run around, I want to be able to displace it in a similar way to the snow, but I don't want to blend two layers together like snow and dirt. I just want to displace the swampy water downwards to create sort of a footprint, and then maybe having it coming back up as well, which I believe I can do with some of the parameters. So let's decide how we're going to do that. First of all, we need to see how this material is working. So if we look at the swamp water material, on it, and we might come and change some parameters that later on, but this is just an instance of the material. If we look at this hierarchy, it'll show us the parent is this default material displacement, and that's why you needed to tick the displacement, enable displacement, because otherwise it wouldn't have had this displacement parent. It would have had a flat version. So let's click on that, and we can see that the Megascan material is basically doing a sort of tiling option. All of the standard textures for albedo, normal, roughness, etc. They go into this parameter adjustment section, which we don't need to worry about, and then it goes into this displacement section, which sets displacement. So I guess we're going to want to do something in this displacement function to receive and apply the trail. But what do we need to do in order to get that displacement working? Well, in order to figure that out, we really want to look at the snow material and see how they did the displacement. Let's come back to the trail, surface trails system, look at their material examples, and let's look at their snow landscape. So there's a few things going on here. It's creating a snow material, it's creating a dirt material, blending them together. But the real heart of this is this trail sampling function effectively puts out the mask of the trail, and then we can apply it. I mean, they've been very sophisticated here, and they've even applied it to the normal and the height to create a really sophisticated blending of the material. We won't go that far in our particular example. They've also gone into the material mask to effectively use the trail to blend between the snow and the dirt. Again, we don't need to do that because we're not blending, we're just displacing the swampy water material down. And really the bit we want to do is in here, this trails displacement. So it's taking the trail the trail mask, it's inverting it using the 1 minus x, so that everywhere the trail has been is black rather than white, and everywhere where we haven't done the trail is white. And then we multiply it by the elevation that we want. So in this snow example, they've got an elevation of 40. What that means is everywhere that we haven't walked will be displaced upwards by 40. That's 1 times 40. And everywhere we've walked will be somewhere between 1 and 0, so it will be reducing it back down to 0. So that will create our displacement amount. We won't need to do this. This is just blending back in the dirt, so it only applies displacement to the dirt. And then the final thing it does is it adds in any existing displacements from the materials. So yeah, we might do that. And finally multiplying it by the B mask, which is the Z or Z axis, in order to displace it upwards. You can either do it this way or you can use vertex normal world space. Both are pretty similar, although vertex normal is more accurate in terms of slight slopes and displacing from the slope rather than directly upwards. So let's leave that there because we'll come and paste some stuff from that. Let's go back to our Megascan displacement material, and we need to really just apply that trail logic inside this displacement function. So if I open it up, you can see that what it's doing is it is calculated the world displacement from the displacement amount you want here, taking the input height from the material and really doing a similar thing to what we're about to do for the trails. There's tessellation calculations as well, which we might come and tweak at the end, but we really need to just add our own displacement in here as well. So let's go back to the snow landscape. Let's first of all take the MF trails function. So I'm doing a copy and then coming in here and pasting that in. So that's our trails output mask. Then let's go to the displacement function, and we want to take these three nodes, put them in here. So effectively the mask is inverted. Let's just tidy this up as we go. So the mask gets inverted. We then multiply it by the elevation we want. Let's have, because we're doing a muddy, swampy water rather than snow, we don't need it quite so high, so let's just reduce that to 20 as the default, and let's call it trail elevation. And we need to put it in a group that this material knows. So this 06 displacement group, which is used by one of the other parameters, will put it in that panel. Okay, so now we've got the height. The next thing we need to do is to make sure it's in the right direction before we apply it. So let's go back to snow landscape, follow this. So we're adding it to existing height, which we won't do at the moment. We'll come back and do that later on. But we'll take these two, multiplying it by the Z or Z axis. Again, copy, paste. Multiply by the Z axis. And we now have the right displacement in the right direction, ready to plug into our displacement. What I'll do is I'll just replace the displacement at the moment, and rather than add it. In this particular case, this swampy water has so little displacement going on that it won't make any difference really. But that should do the job. We're effectively now displacing by our trail with an elevation of 30. So let's save this. Go back to our landscape. Nothing looks that different at the moment. Let's go into play mode. So we've got the mannequin sunken into the swampy water. Yeah, and as we move around, it's a bit difficult to see because it's a very dark function. So I've gone and tried to go to these sort of sunny spots, but you can see that as I go around, it's displacing. Let's see if we can find something a bit sunnier, so it's a bit more obvious. Let me come out of here, bring up the camera speed, and let's see if I can fly to the end of the map and find something sunnier. Yeah, how about there? Okay, so let's go back into play mode. Right, and you can see as I left and right, you can see that I'm leaving trail behind. There's a couple of things I'm noticing. First of all, I can see a lot of triangles in that displacement, which implies to me that the tessellation is very low. So we can probably adjust that. And then we can also play around with how long the trail attenuation is, how long it lasts, so it sort of gloops back up. let me come out here, and let's look at the Trails Manager first of all, and let's look at the settings for here. So we've got a setting for distance, how far in the distance the trail is shown, the attenuation of the trail. So 0 means that any displacements or materials last forever, rather than if you put that number up, they go away more slowly. And then this side fade is really the sort of slope of the displacement or the material. Let's actually, before we do this, let's have a look at this tessellation issue. So if I go into the wireframe view, see our tessellation here. Let us go into the material that we're applying. So that is the swamp water, the landscape. Go to this swamp water instance. I think it might be open already. Yeah, up here. Let me just bring it out. Put the landscape back up so we can see as we do this. So we can change things like the tiling of the material and various elements here. If I go down to displacement, can you see the trail elevation parameter is in there because we added it to this displacement group. We'll leave it as 20 for now. This tessellation control, let's have a play with that. Let's change the distance offset first of all. Okay, so that's moved the tessellation from the camera further away. Let's change the fade. Okay, so it basically fades out further, and then the multiplier, let's see if we can up the multiplier. Yeah, so that basically multiplies the triangles in that. So that might make it a little less obvious when we're creating the trail, a little more detailed. Save that, go back into lit mode, and now if I go in with my character, I run around. Yeah, those displacements are much higher resolution now. So they're still staying there permanently, which you might want, but I want them to sort of suck back up over a second or two. So let's go back to those parameters to see how we do that. Come out of here and go to our trail manager, and you can play around with these parameters here. For me, I found that the side fade of 0.01 worked best in this approach I'm just about to try out, and I'm going to try trails attenuation of 5. Let's see how that works out. So what's going to happen is the trail is going to be written, but it's going to fade out. It's not 5 seconds, but it's a sort of an ascending scale. So we're going to play mode, and you see that it basically it displaces and then sucks back up. Quite a nice effect, especially when you sort of look into the sun, see the watery effect. So again, I could play around with that and make it slower or faster. In fact, let's see if we can slow it down a bit. Reduce the amount to 1. Now it's sort of creating a trail and then sucking up behind me. So this is a really very useful asset. Obviously you still have to do a bit of material work to apply the trail, but it does quite a lot behind the scenes that would be difficult to create from scratch. And as I said, it's free for the month of October 2021, so I would suggest grab it while you can and use it in your projects. Just be aware that there might be a performance implication. There always is when you're doing tessellation and displacement, so just be cautious of that. But other than that, I hope you found it a useful tutorial, and I'll be back with another one soon. So keep positive, stay negative, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.